till now.
Well, welcome all to Citizen Development in the Salesforce Ecosystem, or the alternate title that Jake gave you. Are you a citizen developer? I didn't really have a title other than, I guess I could change it right now, but you know, I didn't really have a title for this. This is just based off some concepts that I once gave at a sort of company talk to try to talk through some of the topics that we'd kind of had as an open question. And we had this piece of software for wireframing called Avani Creator, but we weren't really using it to its full potential. And I wanted to sort of express some concepts around, you know, like everyone kind of getting together, to help out with, you know, big problems that sort of face society. So, or even just the society of our team. And so I had given this talk about citizen development as a concept, and it's really modeled after a Dreamforce presentation that I went to, and it was given by an Avani personnel. And so they gave this talk, and it was grounded in this concept of citizen development. So then I was curious about it, and I looked it up. There is a really good white paper. I'll try and find it. It's, you know, a Google search away. If you just search for Salesforce citizen developer, they have this white paper they put out. And so a lot of this is copied, like basically verbatim from that, just because I wanted to stick kind of close to the Salesforce definition of the topic. But it is something that's sort of like it's a guiding principle for, as you'll kind of see. It's not just Salesforce, but there's very Salesforce-y themes in the concept of citizen development. So this is like a broader thing that Salesforce really embodies really well. And so let's just get started then. Okay, so you'll see, I will show the full slides. Let me know if you can still see my screen. Can you still see it?
We're still watching you there, Gabe.
Okay, so am I not sharing my screen?
Oh, you're sharing it. It was just in a different window somehow. Like it was still your camera. Maybe if you turn your camera off, it would toggle back.
If I go here, can you see it?
I can see it fine, so I don't know. There are, if you look at the list of people, Gabe is listed twice. So just click on the one that's presentation.
Interesting. Can you see the, maybe I'll just show them from here just to be safe. Can you all see the first slide?
Yeah.
Anyone playing telecall bingo right now? You just won one right there. All right. So Jake, I did put the fun Salesforce characters on here, even though I had to change out the slides really rapidly from company branded slides. So I did it really quick, but I did add in Salesforce characters here. So can't say that I didn't try on the visual design, although unfortunately, yes, these are pretty bland slides, so you'll have to forgive me for that. So what is citizen development? Okay, so there was a time not long ago when programming and development skills were exclusive to IT personnel. However, times have changed. So this is a concept like, right now we're at a point in society where IT and the role of IT is really big and really important. You can see how inundated it is in everyone's lives, especially now at a time like this. But the times are kind of changing on the way that the internet was, you know, in the early days. You think about the 80s and stuff like that. I mean, it's like a lot of techies, and this is a techie centric thing, and then the sort of the concentric circles expand. So the use of the internet is not, you know, the realm of the techie people anymore. Many different kinds of professionals can create effective business applications quickly and at low cost. So even the tools that are out there, the internet ecosystem, and really any ecosystem related to computing right now, the tools that are out there are kind of exponentially growing around upon themselves. And so you are enabled with some of these new tools to be able to engage different types of resources. And so one concept of calling them, these folks that is citizen developers. And so they're doing more than bridging the app gap. They're actually transforming their businesses to better connect with their clients. One thing on this app gap concept, this is, I don't know if it's ever mentioned in these slides after this. So I want to make sure that I touch on it now, if it's not touched on later. The app gap is a pretty critical concept to this whole idea of citizen development, because the idea of the app gap, right, is that there's this demand for applications out there that do certain things. Many businesses want different kinds of applications, or they don't like the applications they have, and they want to get new ones that work better for them. So there's this strong demand that's definitely out there. You can see that in things like software developer salaries and demand, and how it's usually pretty easy to try to switch around and whatnot. And so it's something where there's a high demand, right? The app gap is what has developed in the absence of resources that can fill that, and the demand for it. So it's a supply and demand question, right? And so citizen developers are a potential option to try to fill that gap, right? So let's go on to the next slide here. So what is citizen development? It's the recent trend of businesses empowering employees from diverse backgrounds to collaborate with IT departments to build business applications. So what are the things that kind of make up citizen development, right? So we're kind of asking these like what questions. What is it? How do you do it, basically? And this is sort of the how question. So how do you have citizen development? How are you employed as a citizen developer? Well, citizen developers, often you'll find them using low-code solutions. Low-code solutions help close the skill gap between citizen developers and IT professionals. These solutions often consist of platforms. So you have usually you'll have a platform that you can build things on top of it. It'll have tools to help you, so built-in tools. There's rules and limits around it, and support options. So this really is to a large extent here, it's describing cloud computing, and a lot of the things that are enabled from cloud computing. And that is true that this advance in the possibilities for citizen development really is supercharged by the idea of cloud computing. So it's no coincidence that these two things correspond. Other things that you'd see in a citizen developer's toolkit, clear, easy to navigate graphical interfaces. I think that's a really big part about it, is that it's more visual. So even if you're not someone that necessarily thinks like linearly or code or terminal or console, you can still get along in the world of citizen development if your mind just works a little bit different and it's more oriented towards maybe like space and spatial questions rather than necessarily the question of a code or a linear or almost mathematical nature to it. So it's just a different way of kind of orienting yourself in a mindset. And so that's one thing that these graphical interfaces can provide for you, is that you give many different users the power to assemble and test working applications within the platform. And so then these developers can launch these applications for general use, and you don't actually have to write any code for them. That's the point here. Okay, so here we've gone through the what and the how. Here's the why. Why citizen development? Well, the demand for business applications, this is that app gap concept. It's expanding exponentially, and in many cases, it outpaces internal IT's capacity to deliver them. And so IT departments are often finding themselves buried under ever-increasing mountains of app development requests on top of the regular duties of upkeep, infrastructure, and security. It creates a strain on resources, slows the development process when you don't have these things out there. And so IT departments have to end up prioritizing. And citizen development can free up some of the strain on those resources, because many different types of resources can contribute in the development life cycle of the resolution to a certain business problem, right? Or business process improvement. Resources closer to a client's functional requirements may have more accurate understanding of the purpose an audience of the app in question. That is a great point. You can enable citizen developers from different kinds of areas of an organization, and these folks often can have really on-the-ground insights about the business problems that are being faced. So you can actually convert some of those resources that know these true issues into the resources that actually help solve the issues by developing the solution. So it's a really cool kind of mix that you can have there. It says at the end here, after all, business users are the end users who are feeling the strain without having that business application. Last time I gave this, I gave the demo right about now, but I do have more slides here. So what about coders, right? So this is the previous slides have been more like, hey, you know, what is citizen development? How does it work? You know, why? Some of those kinds of questions. Now it's sort of the question of, well, if we see that this is a value, and if citizen development is a value, put yourselves now in the shoes of someone who is writing code in a moment and at a time when citizen development is a question out there. Ought we, should we? What do we do? Do we get mad about this? And I don't think that is the right sort of approach, because it's kind of, it's better to think about, filling the demand and filling those questions, especially if the tools are progressing in that direction anyways. Anyone can decide, if you're writing code, the kind of application you're trying to make. And do you do that in sort of a gracious and positively thinking way, or is it sort of a negative way that you think about it? And if you think about it in a positive way, the question is, well, how do I enable all sorts of people to use this, including other users who may want to improve upon the experience of the way this app is basically developed, so you can actually enable others to develop the app after you, even if they're not writing code, right? And so that's that, for those of you among, on this call that do write code on a daily basis, it's that question of, you face it every day. What is the right way to build this application? What is a way that I could build this application in a way that is reusable, or is configurable, or can enable someone else to improve this later on down the road? So it's just something to think about in the way that we participate in the citizen development ecosystem. So that's kind of the point I have on this slide. Developers that know how to code can help too. You can build the kinds of apps that facilitate citizen development. These apps tend to be configurable. They'll use things on Salesforce, at least, like S-objects and custom metadata. I still use the word design tokens, although I think it's called something different now with Lightning Web Components. But you can use those. You'll have a highly parameterized application. That's another way to facilitate these sorts of things. And the really important one is highly interactive feedback providing interfaces. And there are ways that you can build Lightning components that facilitate that, especially if you have like a mix of S-objects. I call these like, S-objects as metadata is like a term that I've used before. So if you're building an application on S-objects and the data that you put into them ultimately is not really like data pertaining to your business, but it's actually metadata about an application, is really definitely a way to make a highly configurable, especially when you're using Salesforce, highly configurable citizen developer enabled application, because you've enabled levers on the sorts of things that can be done with that application. You've enhanced its configurability. So that's often a way that at least I try to approach the way that to build a good app, to build the right kind of app. It's better to try to approach it from that aspect. And that facilitates citizen development, right? That helps close the app gap, because the way that you've participated in the ecosystem, the way that you wrote that code enabled others to be able to take it forward to another level. So that's the role that coders can play. And then I have this. That's a bit of a non sequitur. Whoa! I didn't really try to transition to this slide at all, but it was something I wanted to talk about. I kind of touched on it at the beginning, right? That there's probably lasting effects from this whole crisis that we're in right now on the whole economy, and there will be displacement, I believe, from people from their careers. And it's not like things like the app gap might go down, like business demand for business applications might go down a little bit, but if you look at it right now, the infrastructure that's up, the tech economy is still going. That's the one that's especially still kind of kicking because it can. Because when you think about cloud computing, it's designed for this. This is exactly the sort of idea that it's supposed to thrive in. You can do your business anywhere. You could do it from anywhere. Is like the calling card, especially for cloud development, which by extension then helps out with citizen development as well. And so the internet, you can think about it, it's really a vital resource right now, and society still is using it, and citizen development is still, the need for that building apps is still there. So you can think about this as maybe a potential for people to pivot if they need to in their careers. There is opportunities for that, especially if you have these apps that facilitate citizen development. And so it offers that path. And okay, so the last piece that we have here, we have a demo. And so you'll recall that I did base this off of the concept of what then I was going to show Avani Creator, and I will do that now. But I just wanted to note there, some of the examples of what this facilitates is Salesforce especially is a big part of that. And it's not just things like flow, which hopefully I don't know if we can get to that if we have time or if there's interest for it. But it's an example of that, and we're certainly willing to give tours to that for anyone here. I'm always learning. I'm trying to get better at flow, but flow I think is a really good example of that. Even though even other parts of Salesforce, things you wouldn't really think about, they are citizen development. It's all over the place. The whole thing is steeped in it. Formula fields, workflow rules. The whole thing is just basically one big citizen development process. And so there's lots of facets to it that facilitate that sort of thing. And Avani Creator is just one small piece of that, of something we've found in the past that does help facilitate these sorts of things. So let's switch over to that. Any questions here to this far before I get started with this? It's hard when you're doing these over video chat because you can't really see people's reactions. So you don't really know if you're like talking crazy or if people don't understand. So I hope this is legible.
We can do the screen, Gabe.
What?
We can see the screen if that's what you're asking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool beans. Well, good. All right, let's build a Lightning component then. So what this tool actually is, Avani Creator, is it's just like build a, oh, I like this one, an Einstein card. Build a Salesforce application however you want. So I can put an avatar here. I can do some badges. And the cool thing that's about Avani Creator with this component library on the side here is these are like exactly the same components that are in the Salesforce Lightning component library. So like if you pick anything in here, it's probably also, I'll just do a path. Let's do that. It's probably also a Lightning component. In fact, it definitely is. And I'll show you how this can actually be really the facilitation of a developer's workflow in a day. Because if you're a citizen developer here, right, you have the ability to just, I can make any kind of app I want. I've got a, little gear icon there, got some badges, an avatar, an Einstein card, whatever that is. And man, I can do a lot of things with this. Okay, so if I go over here, look, you can see like, here's the value. This is like exactly out of HTML. So this is exactly the way you configure components in HTML. So I'm just gonna, why is this doing this to me? Salesforce. Woo. All right, and then I can set, I want to do a button on here because buttons are a good way to show some concepts. So buttons, I got a button. Buttons have a variant. And you can set a variant here to change the sort of styling of it, the way it looks. I want it to look maybe I want it to look destructive. Nice. All right, so I'm going to do another one. This one I'll do a brand. All right, cool. And then I'm going to give it a label. Okay. Cancel. All right, rocking. This is looking pretty good. How do I change this one? Cool. All right, it's the Einstein Fun Times card. And I actually want these buttons to be inside here, so I'm going to put them over here. And then I want this one over here. Can I do that? Or is it not going to let me? Oh, that's not what I wanted. Undo. Oh, a little tricky with the drag and drop here. It's not what I wanted. There we go. Cool. And all right, so now I'm going to show you what I can do with what I've made here. If I go to this little thing over here, there's a way for it to actually compile what I just built over here as a drag and drop entity. I can just, compile it down to code because it knows how to structure these things. And these are all common Lightning components out of Salesforce's base Lightning component library. And so it's putting in here the values that I configured as I was working through in the interface earlier. So if you look here, I've got the P tags of the Salesforce dev group, and that's within the text area. I've got my variant here on this button of brand that says OK, a variant of destructive on a cancel button. So this is looking pretty great. It's looking exactly like how I developed it in a different looking interface earlier. Where's my Einstein Fun Times card? There we go. It's in the title of the Lightning card. And so I can copy this, or I can just do this. And I can actually just, put this in a Lightning component. Oh, whoops, I need to do this. And just put this in a Lightning component here and save it to Salesforce. And then I can go over once it's, uh-oh, what did I do wrong? Utility settings. Okay, well, I guess I got to lose the button icon.
Yeah, those are often a compilation problem with icons, even pulling from SLDS's own library.
It's annoying.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Now it deployed. So I can hop over and, whoa, let's take a look at the component once it loads. Nice. The Einstein Fun Times card didn't pull over the Lightning style, the Einstein styling. That's kind of annoying. But it did pull over the fact that it's a card. It's got my buttons in it. It's got the path and the credits thing, and then I had to take out the, I guess it's not finding icons very well today. Or maybe that's the icon I took out, I don't know. So that's it. I've made a lightning component here out of Avani Creator, and that did not require really writing any code except for the fact that my code wouldn't compile. But it did. It was a pretty easy fix from there on out. And once the work that I did here really did not require me trying to type out a bunch. Honestly, you could say that this saved me some time. If I, were actually just trying to build out an interface, this might actually compete pretty well with a workflow where you're just writing code to build the same interface. So actually, even for coders, this might even be an advantageous tool to use. And in fact, I do know some developers that have used this before to save some time. So
I use it because I'm not a front end guy, so I can do it, but it's getting started, which is always hard for me. So I use Avani every time I have to do a Lightning component from scratch now.
Wow, that's crazy.
Just to give it a kickstart, and it saves like 2 or 3 hours, and then also because it has the visual library there, I can be like, how does this actually render?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's actually like I mean, it's not the only tool out there that does this.
Yeah,
it's great. Especially with Lightning Web Component support now.
Yeah, especially that. It used to only spit out Aura, but ever since it went to Web Component support, now it's like supercharged awesome. Yeah, because we would have to like refactor it for a while there. But now you don't have to do that, so it's pretty sweet. But it's neat that it also goes to Aura as well, so if you really want to do it in Aura, you can also, it renders to Aura as well here.
Hey, Gabe, what's on that HTML tab? Because this is HTML that it's...
Yep.
HTML.
HTML,
it's pure HTML. Okay.
Yeah, HTML put here, this is like SLDS styling. So this is all, you're not going to see anything that references these out-of-box components, because these are actually components that Salesforce has developed. So these are web components, and actually, if you look, these are web components too. These are just wrappers around them. And so this is where Salesforce puts the components that they build, which you can then reuse. And actually, somewhat, you might argue that's also a facilitator of citizen development. If you make it easier to write a Lightning component, because the building blocks of the markup are easy building blocks to use. Like, honestly, you might be able to argue like the fact that it's component based here really facilitates something like Avani, because the component based architecture means that something like this, where you can drag and drop it around, like it lends itself to that. So that is another expression of that concept of like the way that you build an application matters. You can build, they could have written, Salesforce's Lightning framework to use to be in any sort of way, They could have made it work like jQuery, right? But would that be the right way to go? No, the way they approached it is like, no, we're just going to have people build components because they're building blocks, and then we can help out by providing some of those building blocks pre-made out of the box. So yeah, it makes stuff really easy to make.
Is Avani only providing the user interface? There's nothing that provides like the JavaScript part of the web component?
No, it does not provide the JavaScript. That's a great question. Yeah, there are actually, I think there's another Avani product that's not Avani Creator. I think it's called Avani Builder. And I'm pretty sure that one will write JavaScript for you. I haven't really, we don't have that. And so I've never used it, but I'm pretty sure that's what it does. So yeah, there are Avani products out there that will help you write the JavaScript as well. I'm pretty sure. You could just Google it.
Hey, what's the price point on those tools?
Oh gosh, Nick, do you know? It's like $100 for one license for a year or something. Was that it?
Avani was like, if you buy it like one, it was like there's some license that was like $60, but I don't remember if it was per year. I mean, in business, if it saves you half an hour a month, this is absolutely,
it definitely helps pay for itself. Yeah, this is a.
I mean, I'm self-employed, so for me, I would have to suck it up and make sure it's worth it for me.
This is if you're doing Lightning development, and I would say this is almost universally worth it, personally.
I mean, $60 a year is nothing. I mean, if it is $60 a month.
Yeah, you can get a demo for free. So if you're interested in trying it, here's their website. And it really is like, it's a very easy tool to use, and it's really like you saw what it did there, right? I mean, like this is
I have worked
like, yeah, it doesn't do the JavaScript, so none of that is written here. But I'm pretty sure, I'm trying to find it here on their website.
It's avani.app/pricing. If you just like replace the products blah 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 with just the word pricing.
Oh, for pricing.
Yeah, they just, I don't know why they like hid the link. Thanks, but
so yeah.
So
Prototyper 50.
Yeah, and I think that's the one for what used to be called the Creator, right? I could be wrong.
Oh, and that's the yearly price. So you can also get it monthly for 60.
Yeah, I remember.
And then you can just cancel after a month if you didn't want it anymore or something. But yeah, so some of these other features they offer, but like the component builder, I'm pretty sure is the one that builds JavaScript. Are they going to let me in or something? I think
well, I know this is new.
Yeah, they're going to ask me for a login, and I don't have a license to that. But so you can do styling with it and adjust their properties.
Actually, we should probably try it too. But it says code. There's something there. Watch a component code come to life, huh?
As you build it out.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like an IDE around it. But yeah, I don't know anything about this feature, but I think it's out there. I think it might do something with that, but it's probably free to, well, it says request a demo. So I don't know.
But yeah.
It'd be worth it.
So fun fact about Avani Creator, though, is that at Penrod, we found out about it because one of the clients that we're working with, Randall, I won't say the client, we love Randall, very competent business analyst, not technical at all, like zero technical background. And there was a dev on their team, who recommended Avani, and he actually like adopted it for a major part of his daily flow because as the business analyst, he was the go-between between the business users and the stakeholders, and then on the other side, the developers. And they kept having these problems where the business users would write out a text user story, and then give it to the developers, and it would come back not at all looking like what they expected. And so in that situation, it saved them a ton of money and time and got them better products. But more importantly, the main user this client is not a technical person. Like I can't think of a better endorsement of it than that.
Yeah, that's the embodiment of citizen development, right?
Yeah. And it frees their developers up to focus on like doing what they do best, coding and figuring out logic and the systems. And then it lets the sort of business requirement gathering, the prototyping happen on a different team, and it sort of just frees up their capacity. Which goes back to what you were saying, Gabe.
Yep. Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. Any other questions or thoughts about this?
We don't get a kickback from Avani, right? We're actually not.
No, yeah, we are not getting paid for this.
That's right.
This is a free bump to them. They make a great product, and it's definitely something that's in our toolkit that we use to save time and really put together rapid prototypes. Even if you don't code the JavaScript for it, you can still communicate the concepts of this is what it's going to look like in a very early stage format, which is great.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Gabe. Unless anybody else has questions.
I don't have a question, but I have another anecdote. But if anyone else has questions, go first. Anyone?
No, I think you're good.
Okay. All right. So the COVID-19 was funny, because Freightert here in Milwaukee, the big health system. So my partner Mickey is a pharmacist, a clinical pharmacist, and you know, the work from home is obviously a topic on everyone's mind, and he does most of his work over the phone, working with patients. So I was wondering why aren't they mandating you work from home yet? Because they hadn't, and it turned out yesterday that it emerged that their IT team for the past like 4 years has been overwhelmed by their Epic EMR implementation, which is always, you know, and it's similar to Salesforce, but most of the organization's development resources have been allocated to this one application, which granted is the core of their entire system. And so now with the COVID-19 happening, they have so much tech debt because they've allocated, you know, the application debt has been so high. They can't have all their employees work from home that they want to or that could, because their network is about to crash under the bandwidth. They haven't beefed up their network because they've been prioritizing that to fill that app gap, you know?
Yeah.
It's like a perfect example, like today, and not good.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a real thing. You know, we're on the ground with it. You know, you see that demand and it doesn't go away for especially custom development, because something is like just not right about the solution. And so that's one thing, you know, thinking about the way that you approach those solutions, I think is a really big thing. It's like, then that's the question I always ask, do you approach it in a positive or a negative way? And if you approach it in a positive way, it's like, well, how do I do this to really enhance and help what goes out into society? How is what I'm building, you know, customizable in all these ways? I think really, I don't know why, I think there was like some computer games that I played back in the day, and that's where it's sort of like that concept really came, you know, at a sort of the first point for me is like, how do you build these sorts of things where you can like extend upon them? I think it was like there was like this football game that I had, and you could write your own plays and then run them and see what the players did. And this was like mid 90s technology. It wasn't great. Like, it didn't run your play very well, but it would run it. And I remember thinking that was such a cool way to build an application. If you could like write your own plays, that's really customizable and kind of fun. It's like things like Minecraft. I think that's probably an expression of that, or like SimCity or something like that, where you're like building out something that's off of sort of a template, and it is sort of development. You're building a structure. You're building, you know, in the case of like a SimCity, you're like literally you're building a grid of data. But it's not really the way that you think about it when you're playing it as a game. And so it's just a different way of thinking, I think. It's a different way of approaching, you know, a business problem. It's not like cookie cutter. It's not a game you just play through and you can't customize it. It's something where you can sort of open up ends and open up possibilities. And I think that's a really cool way to build applications.
Cool.
Any other questions? Jake, do you want to show us some Salesforce Flow?
I mean, do people want to see a has everyone used Flow before, or?
I have.
I have
I've
to.
minimal experience with the new Flow Builder.
It's actually been a goal of mine to learn to get how to use Flow better. It's been a focus the last couple of months, so it'd be perfect.
So I'm just going to pull up an existing Flow here. Just give me 1 second here.
While you're doing that, I'll say what we're using Flow for. We have a bunch of developers, like 15 developers, and all of our UI interactions now within Salesforce are switching to use Flow.
Oh, wow.
So it's not we're not using it for like community pages. That's still Lightning Web Components, but if there's a screen interaction that's going to take place within Salesforce, we're coding it using Flow.
Because that makes it highly customizable for those that end up needing to maintain it in the future. You've opened up the possibilities for who could be maintainers.
Right. They're crazy concerned about maintenance. So,
Yep.
we still have to write the um, the code that's called for actions, and I mean, there's still code that has to get written, but
But
we
it helps
can
close
use
that
flow.
gap, right?
What's that?
But it helps close that gap, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And it's also self-documenting, so you can just look at it and you can see if you don't, like on yours, if you don't call everything like test one, you can
Yeah.
say what the screen does. It's kind of self-documenting.
Yeah, I actually documented with the display text. This is actually a learning exercise. So this is a flow. It has a bunch of screens, and I just kind of, before I actually show the use case, I want to just show what you can actually do with it. Everyone can see the screen, right?
Yes.
Cool. So like one of the things is that if you can build a pick list field within a screen, and you can make your own value. So like these are just choice one, choice two. I created these my own choices for these particular things. Some of the other cool concepts with pick list, stay in the concept of pick list. I can also pull pick lists from pick list fields that exist. So this is actually the industry field from the account. So you can see it pulled in all the pick list values from the account. You also can do queries with this. So like this is, I'm actually I did a query for all my accounts in my org, and it's actually pulling back all the accounts that are in my org. So you can see there's a bunch of test information here from various trailheads. So you can select that those types of things. One of the cool things is you can actually select, you can do the same concept, do multi-select. And then this just displays some of the, I'm just doing a reduction of the accounts to loop through the accounts. But yeah, you can put images and stuff in there. And the last one here I have here is a dependent pick list. So I'm pulling two fields from the same object. So they have the industry field here, and if I pick agricultural, I can pick a priority. And you notice there's only high or low, but if I pick a different one, I believe this one has all the options in there. So you can do some dynamic picking there what you want for those type of things. And that should end my selection. Not sure what that one was. Yeah. Okay. So we're back to the beginning here. So creating a flow the screen flow is pretty straightforward. So like when we created a pick list, very similar to Avani there, I can pull a pick list. I can pull anything I want in here. So I can pull in a date field and just drop and drag in here. Then I can customize and give it a label and call this date one. You can give it default values, but you can hide it depending on other conditions that are within the screen here. You can make it required. You can also validate the input. So if you want to put a validation around that particular date format, you can also put in like default values. So like I can grab the flow and I can grab current date for this and done. So next time when I run this, once I hit save, it'll pull in today's date. I'm just gonna go back to my flow builder here. So with the flow builder, it's a great use of tools. So you have your screens where you can basically for this pick list. If I go back to my pick list values here, I have all my choices. I can add new choices at a whim here. So I can say I want a new choice and just go new resource. And I'm going to select the choice option here. I'm going to give this one choice 3. Choice 3. Leave it as text. I'll just type in choice 3 there again. Click done. Now we have it there. Now we have 3 choices. You can click done here and I hit save again. Whenever you want to debug it or run it, you always have to hit save. But now if I go in here, now I have my 3 choices. So you can dynamically build your screens here. If you want to play with the records. So like right now I'm pulling all my records, but if I go look at my my choice variable, the account sort here, so I'm going to go to my manager here and get the count choice, right? That's what I said. So within the sort here, you can actually go ahead and hit you can sort the conditional requirements here. You can actually set your own conditions. So maybe I only want industry values that are in a particular, or maybe only want the ones that are there. So you can put filters around the data that you're pulling back. One thing to note with the record choice is that it does limit you to the first 200 that you pull. So if you have more than 200 that meet the requirement, you probably need to have better filtering. And you can actually use these values. You can use other resources here from other areas, as well as if you wanted to pull information that was gathered in a screen beforehand. Other cool things with flows, you can do decisions. So like I'm doing a decision here where basically I'm doing essentially I built my own loop here because I get from my multi-pick list here, I get a string of a bunch of record IDs, and I just want to loop through them to kind of iterate through. I basically want to iterate through them to do something with them potentially. So I just do an assignment here and I end up looping through my decision here. And depending on what here is showing the current ID, then I remove it from another formula with another formula field. Then I go back and then I do a decision off of that again until it's done. And once it's done, then I end the screen and say, okay, we're done with that. And that's where when you saw the Elmer foot picture, that's where that actually happened, was in the screen here. Other than that, I mean, like you can do a lot of other cool things you can make. So I'm just showing screen flow. So this is all interactive with the users. You can also create flows that are what they call headless flows. So basically they run behind the scenes. So you can use process builders or triggers to call the flows.
You can put lightning components in them too, can you?
Yes, you can.
Yep.
So
you build,
I could show you that if you want.
You could build with Avani a lightning component and then just drop it into a flow after probably configuring a few things with it.
And also, you can put a flow and an aura component, I think. Not a lightning web component, but
yeah, I don't think it has to be. You can
put test them, but yeah,
you can launch a flow from a button.
Yeah.
So we're trying that big project that I'm working on, seeing if we can like call flows. Like if we have to have the main component be a Lightning custom code, but you could have like a pop-up form. That's the flow. Even in the community, we're looking at that for a partner community.
Yeah. Yeah. Your actions here. These can become very powerful. So can't do that. You have all your different actions here. You can call pre-existing actions, but you can also call core actions. And then you can call email. And then you can actually create email actions. So you can actually send things on email by doing a label. You can give it a body. You can give it a subject, and you can set the from address and all that stuff. So you can send that off within a flow as well. And that's actually where you call other within your index, where you could call Apex and other Lightning components at that point as well. Any other questions around flow?
I could show another flow if people want to.
Please.
Yeah, if you want to go.
All right, let me share my screen, see if this works. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Sure can.
Good.
Okay, good. All right, so here's an example of a flow that processes a credit card refund. And along the way, it uses a Lightning Web component, and it also calls 3 invocable methods. So when it starts off, it can only be run from a contract or an order. So then I need to decide, is it being run from one of those or is it not? So this first action over here where it gets the object name, that's an invocable method. And I can show you what that code looks like. Can you now see my my WebStorm? Or are you still seeing the other window? Okay.
Yep.
Let me see. Get object names from IDs. So you just mark it as invocable method, and then it's calling it's calling this method. It can pass it whatever request variables you want. You can spit out a bunch of variables at the end as returns. And let me go back. So if you go along the happy path here, if you're on a contract, you end up at this particular screen right here, so the select order screen, and that includes this Lightning Web Component, unpaid orders for contract. And I can show you what that looks like if I go here. So this, what you're seeing here is a Lightning Web Component that's been built. And I didn't fill in contract name. Maybe I can show a better version of this if I maybe record a payment. Well, it has two available orders. So you can select the orders that you want to pay for, or you want refunded, or whatever. And then you're going through the flow, you click the next button. This is if you're on a contract. If you're on an order, then you don't need this this component that's gonna allow you to choose the orders. You're only on one order, so you wouldn't see this screen. So if you go back to the flow builder, this path down at the bottom where it gets the records, does some assignment of variables, it misses that screen with the Lightning Web Component. And then it does another invocable method, which is it validates the order. So possibly they tried to pay for a reduction order, or they tried to refund something which hasn't been paid for. So this invocable method would catch that, and then everything has an ability to spit out an error. So that's why you see all these faults and is error and all that stuff. There's an error screen that handles all the errors. And then if you continue along the way, there's another screen that just you confirm that you want to do this, you want to make this refund. And then there's another invocable method that actually processes the refund. And that includes a SOAP callout. So you could still do complex code while using the flow with all these invocable methods.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep.
And here, if I go back to show you something more complex, issue credit card refund. So let me scroll over. So you could see this is a little bit more complex code where here it's issuing the refund. That's actually calling some more code that does the call out to do it. But yeah, that's what all of our UI interactions now are built this way, using flows and invocable methods. And then we consider it self-documenting because of, you can kind of look at it and see what it's doing. And for maintenance, a developer only needs to be involved if you need to change the Lightning Web Component, or you need to edit one of the invocable methods. Otherwise, somebody else can drag and drop and move around the screens and whatever. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Thanks. It's always great having somebody other than Gabe or I talk or present on something.
Oh, love it. Yeah. Yeah, anytime anybody wants to show something they're working on, or a really strong embodiment of a concept, I mean, that's great. Seeing that connectivity and configurability, I think is great, both from the perspective of that Salesforce made it possible to use those types of tools like invocable methods, like being able to invoke a flow from Apex, or like the ability to put a Lightning component into Flow. All of those are different levels of or different expressions of the ability to enhance citizen development, because you've created that bridge. You've got a certain portion that's code that you know that has to be, but then you can sort of like take those pieces that don't have to be and compartmentalize them. It's really just an expression of, really a traditional app development concept of separation of concerns. What's the right place to put a certain piece of logic? And if it's a piece of logic that concerns something like, well, what's the order of the questions that I ask? Or what's a structure of directions through this, questioning process, as it is with Flow in so many instances. Why make that something that has to be coded, right?
Right. Yeah. Why give yourself more work, right?
Yeah.
We've also found that this is like an ongoing lesson learned, but when the requirements flip from it being doable via a screen flow to it needing to be a custom component, it can not only add more development hours, but it can jump the overall level of effort by a factor of 2 or 3 or 5, both because it's much harder to do the custom code, but also because then all of a sudden the sky is the limit with the business users or the client. So then, because it's custom, they can ask, can you move this button 20 pixels to the left? Or can you have some customization that this field updates when you update that other field? So being able to kind of limit the scope to what's doable using screen flows and flows in general has been like, it's a really nice way of sort of preventing scope creep and keeping projects on schedule.
Limits to what it can do, and that's that question of governance as a function of citizen development, right? If you put rules and kind of a certain limited sandbox as to what you can do with things, it makes it easier to set expectations as to what that app is going to do. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the app doesn't fit the business need or fix the problem. And oftentimes it does. It might not look exactly like somebody necessarily wanted, but it does its job. And oftentimes it looks, pretty much good enough. It meets the end goal.
Yeah,
And even if you have to make it look exactly the way somebody wants, you have that ability to integrate in a Lightning component, right?
Mhm.
Cool. Anyone else have anything else they want to say?
Nope.
Cool. Well, then, thank you everyone for coming. Like I said, I'm going to try to do another one of these in April. Most likely it'll be remote as well. I think we might introduce a newer session where we might do a show off, or share what you've been working on or what you've built. If anybody's interested in that, hit me up and we'll try to accommodate that. So we'll block off some time for like a show and tell type of thing, if that's of interest to anybody.
Yeah, I like that.
Sweet.
Cool.
I've got to build something now.
Can I show Heroku?
You can show Heroku.
Love showing Heroku.
I mean, you're one of the leads, so you can kind of do what you want to. So
Sweet. I'm just going to talk about Heroku. Sorry.
Yeah, you are one of the people who own the agenda. You just put in Gabe's Heroku corner.
yeah. Okay. Well, if that's it. I guess we'll talk to you later. Like I said, Salesforce Saturday. There's one going on in Madison this upcoming weekend that's remote, and then Milwaukee's will be remote as well. I'm trying to figure out how we're going to do that as well, but you're more than welcome to join us. And figure out what we want to do and what we want to accomplish out of these meetups, because we want to be able to achieve something. And if it is just chatting and having to interact with other people during this time, then that's what it will be. Cool. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
You too.